These are the days of Elijah, declaring the word of the Lord. And these are the days of your servant Moses, righteousness being restored. And though these are days of great trials, of famine and darkness and sword, still we are the voice in the desert crying, prepare ye the way of the Lord. Behold, he comes, riding on the clouds, shining like the sun at the trumpet.
Welcome to In Search of Truth. Your speaker for this study is Nigel Milo. We're glad that you're with us, so join us now as we study In Search of Truth.
Open my eyes, Lord, was the request, was the plea, was the prayer of the psalmist. Psalm 119 and verse 18. Open thou mine eyes, that I may behold wondrous things out of thy law. Open thou my eyes, that I may behold wondrous things out of thy law. The psalmist pleaded with God and pleaded to God that God would open his eyes, that he'll be able to see the wondrous things of his law. And it is not that the psalmist wasn't able to physically see. It was not that he was visually impaired. But what the psalmist was saying, Lord, help me to see the way I should see and the things I should see. Help me, dear Lord, to be able to focus on the things that are truly of you and the things that are going to help me to draw closer to you. His eyes are open physically, but he was really praying that God would help him to see things that were there that he was overlooking. And even today, this can be our prayer, and it should be our prayer, that God, you open our eyes, open our minds' eyes, that we can see the things that are so wonderful and so beautiful that you have in store for your children. Open my eyes, Lord, open my eyes. This evening it is our prayer that God will open our eyes. Now we'll be able to see the things that he would have said in his word and apply those things to our lives. As we look at this plea and as we look at this prayer and as we look at this request to open my eyes, Lord, there are two stories to tell. Two stories to tell as we seek to beg God, to pray to God, to ask God to open our eyes. First of all, in the book of Judges chapter 3 and verse number 31, the Bible says, and after him was Shamgar, the son of Anath, which slew of the Philistines 600 men with an ox goad, and he also delivered Israel. Here the Bible is talking about the period of Israel's history that comes at the end of the time of the elders and comes before the time of the kings. So you have the period here of the judges. The period that comes at the end of the period of the elders and before the period of the kings. And the Bible is telling us here about one of the notable judges, and his name is Shamgar. The Bible tells us that Shamgar was the son of Anath, and he slew the Philistines. 600 men using an ox goad, and was able to deliver Israel. That the people would sin, and as a result of that, they would go into captivity by another nation, and then they will cry out to God, and then of course salvation would come. So here's a sin, and then of course we have the servitude where they're serving another nation. Then they cry out to God in sorrow, and then God sends a judge and God delivers them. They are faithful to God during the period of that judge, and then they rebel again, they turn away from God, there's a sin, and then there's a servitude, they were enslaved by some nation. Most of the times it was the Philistines, and then they cry out to God in sorrow, and God brings salvation through deliverance by a judge. And one of the persons that was a judge during that period is Shamgar. And Shamgar actually took an ox goad, and he was able to slay 600 of the Philistines and deliver the Israelites out of bondage. So Shamgar used an ox goad. We don't use that term a lot today, an ox goad, but normally when they were plowing out in the field using the ox or using oxen, that the person who would have been who's directing that or assisting in the plowing would have a stick, and that stick would have a point at the end, and he would prod the animals so that they would be motivated to continue the work that they're supposed to do. So it was not really identified as a weapon. It was something that was used to drive animals, and yet the Bible says that Shamgar used an ox goad, and he was able, as the Bible stated very clearly, to slay 600 men using an ox goad. And when we look at the second story to tell, we have in the book of Judges chapter 15 and verse 15, the same period here of the Judges. It says, and he found a new jawbone of an ass or a donkey, and put forth his hand, and took it, and slew 1,000 men therewith. Here he's talking about Samson. And Samson took the jawbone of an ass or of a donkey, and he was able to slay 1,000 men with that. And of course he was one of the judges who also delivered the Israelites from the Philistines. Here the Bible is telling us that Samson used a donkey's jawbone to deliver the Israelites, and he killed 1,000 men using that. We have Shamgar using an ox goad to be able to deliver the Israelites by slaying 600 men. When we think about an ass's jawbone or a donkey's jawbone, that's not really a weapon that people would use. If you look at the weapons that they had at that time, the donkey's jawbone is never listed as one of those weapons. And yet we are faced with this interesting situation of these two judges, and one, Shamgar, is using an ox goad, and the Samson is using a donkey's jawbone. So as we are able to look at those two stories to tell, the story of Shamgar using an ox goad to kill about 600 Philistines and deliver the Israelites, and Samson using a donkey's jawbone to kill about 1,000 Philistines and deliver the Israelites, then there are two questions to ask when we look at these two stories. And what are those two questions that we are going to ask? Number one, why did Shamgar use an ox goad? Why is it that he used an ox goad to deliver the Israelites from the hands of the Philistines, to kill those 600 men? And the second question we'd like to ask this evening is, why did Samson use a jawbone? Why did he use a jawbone from a donkey? Why did Shamgar use an ox goad? And why did Samson use this ass's jawbone or this donkey's jawbone? Why didn't Shamgar and Samson use a machine gun? Why didn't they use a bomb? Why didn't they use missiles or an armored vehicle or a tank? Why didn't they use some electromagnetic pulse or some rocket-propelled grenade? Why did they use the ox goad, and why did they use the jawbone? And of course, the answer to that is very simple. Why did Shamgar use an ox goad, and why did Samson use the jawbone? Is because this is what they had. This is what they had available to them. This is what they had at their disposal. This is what was within their hand reach. They used what they had. They used what they had. So we asked this question, why? As we look at the two stories to tell, the story of Shamgar using an ox goad to deliver the Israelites out from the hands of the Philistine by slaying 600 men, and Samson using a donkey's jawbone to deliver the Israelites out of the hand of the Philistines by slaying 1,000 men. We look at two questions to ask, like, why did Shamgar use the ox goad, and why did Samson use the jawbone? And we were able to see that they used it because this is what they had. This is what they had at their disposal. This is what was available to them, and this is what was within their hand reach. Now, there is an application that we would like to make. There is an application to make. We've already seen two stories to tell. We have seen two questions to ask, and there is now an application to make. What is that application? It's a very simple application. We, as individuals today, we must use what we have. for the glory of God. We must use what we have for the glory of God. In looking at the example of Shamgar, who used an ox goad, in as much as it was an unorthodox and unconventional tool to use as a weapon to deliver people and to fight against people, yet Shamgar used that ox goad. And he used that ox goad because that's what he had. That's what he had at his disposal. That is what was available to him. In the example of Samson, Samson used a donkey's or an ass's jawbone. He used that to deliver the Israelites out of the hands of the Philistines, and he slayed 1,000 men with that. Now, why did he use a jawbone from a donkey? Because that's what he had. That was what was available to him. That is what was within his hand reach. Now, just as Shamgar was able to use an ox goad because that was within his reach, and Samson was able to use a donkey's jawbone because that was within his reach, today as we seek to be used by God, today as we seek to do God's will, today as we seek to allow the will of God to be manifested in our lives, we have to look around and see what is it that we have at our disposal. What is it that we have at our disposal? And we need to use that for God's glory. Because they used what they had. And sometimes people are praying for things that God, you know, if you give me $1 million, I am going to share some with my neighbor in need. Lord, you know, when I get my own house, I am going to be able to be hospitable. And what the Bible is teaching us here in principle is that we have to use what is available to us. We can't sit down and wait on what we want to be able to do what needs to be done. But we have to use what we have available to us. Sometimes we look at our circumstances and we might say we want to start a business. I remember a young man came to me, he wanted to start a business. He already had his goods, but he didn't have money to build a stall or a shop. But all he had was his goods and a tarpaulin. And he said, you know, he's trying to get some money to build a shop so that he could sell these goods. And I told him, I said, you have a tarpaulin. Why are you waiting to get money to build a shop when you already got a tarpaulin? Spread it on the ground, put your goods on there and start to sell. And as you get your money, you'll be able to build a shop. But you can't sit down and have your goods in a room somewhere waiting for money to get a shop when you've got the goods and you got the tarpaulin. And so he wanted to sit down there, or he wanted to go try to get the money when he built the shop, then sell the goods. But we have to use what we have. He had the goods, he had the tarpaulin, and that's where we have to start. That's where we have to start. We have to use what we have as we work towards getting the other things that we would want. And in this example of Shamgar, and in the example of Samson, that's exactly what they did. So we must use what we have for the glory of God. What do you have at your disposal this evening? What do you have within your hand reach? What is it that you have available to you? Because whatever we have available to us, God is saying, use it for His glory.
What a mighty God we serve. What a mighty God we serve. Angels bow before Him, heaven and earth.
In Search of Truth would like for you to have this free home study Bible course. If you would like to receive this Bible course, write to Bible Course, 2841 Central Amelia's Ward, Linden, Guyana. We hope that you will take the opportunity today and write for your free home study Bible course.
Welcome back. We were talking just now about the fact that Shamgar used an ox goad because that's what was available to him. And Samson used a donkey's jawbone because that's what was available to him. In the same way today, as we seek to allow ourselves to be used by God, and as we seek to pursue the things in life that will bring glory and honor to God, we can't sit down and wait for the things that we long for to do what we need to do. We have to begin by using what we have right now. Using what we have right now until we can get whatever those things are. And so if it is that we want to start a business, and we want to start this business and it's going to take $10,000 to start the business, and we only have $1,000, we can't sit down and wait for the other 9. We've got to start doing something with this 1,000 because this is what we have available. We can't sit down and say, well, I got to get $9,000 more to do this business. Then I have to start doing something with the 1,000 that I have, because that's what is available to me. We're able to look at that example of Samson and that example of Shamgar, and Lord, we must use what we have for the glory of God. We cannot use what we do not have. We cannot use what we do not have. It is very simple. We can't use what we don't have. Someone said, well, you know, I want a taxi. I want a car to work taxi, because that's what I want to do now. But you don't have a car, and therefore you're not going to be able to work taxi. Then what we can do, my friends, is we can use what we have. We're talking here about being industrious. We're talking here about being aware of the resources that are available to us, and how we can use this as stepping stones to our goals, instead of waiting for our goals to come to us all materialized and full-fledged, all matured and flourishing. We're going to have to start somewhere, and we're going to have to start with what we have, because we cannot use what we do not have. People sometimes talk about the fact that they want to get a job, and they are trying to get these qualifications to get this job, and they're sitting down and waiting on these qualifications to come. But why not get a job with the qualifications that you have now, and then work towards getting the other qualifications so that you can get that other job, instead of just sitting down and saying, well, you know, this is the job that I want, and have to get this. Use what we have right now. We're not going to be able to accomplish our physical and spiritual goals in leaps and bounds. We are going to accomplish them one step at a time, a little bit at a time. Our idea for business, if we are entrepreneurs, or our ideas to develop some form of investment, it's not going to blossom overnight. It's going to be one step at a time. And we must begin to use what we have, and to begin to develop those things and bring glory and honor to God. We cannot sit and wait on what we do not have. There are many persons who are sitting and waiting to get the right amount of money to start their business, to get the right amount of money to launch off with some investment. As they sit and wait, time is going by and the money is not being used. Whatever we have at our disposal, whether we have a business idea, whether we're thinking about something to do for our families, we have to use what we have. We can't bank on what we do not have. Can't bank on what we do not have. Jesus used what was at his disposal. In the book of John chapter 8 and verse number 6, it says, this they said, tempting him, that they might have to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down, and with his finger wrote on the ground, as though he heard them not. Here is the example of Jesus. And what did Jesus do? As they brought the woman caught in adultery, Jesus started writing on the ground. Now, he didn't have a chalkboard. He didn't have a dry eraser board. He didn't have an iPad that he could scribble on. What he had was the ground that was available to him, and he wrote on the ground. And the Bible says he did that twice in that particular situation. In other words, he used what was available to him. He used what was available to him. In the second example, of course, when we think about John chapter 13, verse 4 and verse number 5, the Bible says that he riseth from supper, laid aside his garments, and took a towel, and girded himself. After that, he poured water into a basin, and began to wash the disciples' feet, and to wipe them with the towel wherewith he was girded. What did Jesus do? He took a towel, he took a basin, he put some water in it, and he washed the disciples' feet. Why he didn't use a pressure washer? Because that was what was available to him. Jesus used the ground to scribble on. Jesus used the basin, he used the water, he used the towel, because that's what was available to him. Someone might have said, well, you know, I'm waiting for some warm water, or I'm waiting for something more fancy and more sophisticated, then I'm going to wash their feet. No, that's not what Jesus did. What was available to him was water, a basin, and a towel, and he used that to wash the disciples' feet. In the book of Luke chapter 19 and verse number 4, the Bible says in reference to Zacchaeus, and he ran on before and climbed up into a sycamore tree to see him, for he was to pass that way. Here the Bible tells us that Zacchaeus did what? Zacchaeus knew that Jesus was coming, knew that he was short, and so he wanted to see Jesus, and so he ran ahead and climbed up in a sycamore tree so that he'll be able to see Jesus. No, he didn't have a ladder. He didn't have a tower. What he had available to him was a sycamore tree. And guess what he did? He used that sycamore tree. Today, God wants us to use what we have available to us. Whether we're talking about being in service to God, or we're talking about pursuing our careers or our professions, we have to start out by using what we have in order to get what we do not have. We work with something and that develops and it grows. Someone told me the other day, well, it's about a year ago, that they wanted to start a saving account. But they were waiting to get $100,000 to make a big start. And I asked them, I said, how long have you been waiting for that? They said, well, they've been waiting for about 2 years. And every time they get close to $100,000, they'd end up using it out. And I told the individual, I said, you need to start with what you have. Because if you keep waiting on this $100,000, you might never get it at one time. And so you'll never be able to save. Whatever you have, at the time they had $65,000, I said, go with that and start saving. And you're going to put in and you're going to put in, and soon you're going to get to that 100 and even surpass it. But don't sit down and wait for the $100,000 whole to go and start that bank account. Start with what you have, because that 65 is more than the minimum balance or the amount needed to start a new account. In the book of Matthew 25 and verse number 15, it says, unto one he gave 5 talents, unto another 2, unto another 1, to every man according to his several ability, and straightway he took his journey. Here the Bible is talking about the master who gave 5 talents to one of his servants, 2 to another, and 1 to another. And he took his journey. And the Bible tells us that to each of the servants that were given talents, they were given it based on their ability. Even though here it is talking about a medium of exchange, a weight of a talent to be a weight of something, we can also realize that God gives to us resources based on our ability. That things are made available to us based on our ability. And that is why in 1 Peter 4 and verse number 11, the Bible says, if any man speak, let him speak as the oracles of God. If any man minister, let him do it as to the ability which God giveth, that God in all things may be glorified through Jesus Christ, to whom be praise and dominion forever and ever. Amen. Notice what the Bible says there. It says, if any man speak, let him speak as the oracles of God. If any man minister, let him do it as of the ability which God giveth. Here the Bible is telling us that we need to use the ability that God has given to us as we minister or as we serve. As we don't want to sit down and say, well, I, would have been able to do this if I could sing, or I would have been able to do this if I was a good athlete. Don't look at what you could have been able to do if you have those talents. Look at what we can do now with the talents that we have right now. I've heard some people say that they want a certain kind of job. They want a certain kind of job, or they want to start a business and they want to get a $300,000 to start this business. And so sometimes I would ask the question, okay, so you don't have the $300,000. No. Are you going to work, take a job so that you can get this $300,000? They say yes, but not any kind of job. And I've often said God respects honest labor. There is nothing derogatory in an honest job. There's nothing derogatory in a job that brings glory and honor to God's name, because it is honest and because it glorifies God. I might want that $300,000 to begin a business, but it might mean that I have to take a job doing something very different from what I am striving for, so that I can be able to use that as a channel to get my $300,000. And when I get that now, then I'm going to be able to do what I had planned to do. Maybe I might decide I'm going to sell some plantain chips or some chicken foot or mithai. Maybe I might decide that I'm going to try to buy some low-cost stocks in a company that I think has great potentials. Like maybe I've looked at some of the banks and realized that they're making a lot of profits, and they're paying out quite a bit of their profits in dividends to their shareholders, and that keeps increasing. And maybe I would invest in that and talk to a broker and get a very diversified portfolio, or buy some bonds or treasury bills, or maybe I will buy some fruits and sell them back. But look at the avenues. Maybe there's a security guard company that has a vacancy. I go and I work there and I tally up how much money I would make, and as I accumulate my $300,000, then I'm ready to pursue now that other aspect of it. But if I sit down and I wait, I might never get that 300. So God is saying, use what you have now to bring glory and honor to his name. In Luke chapter 12 and verse number 48, the Bible says, but he that knew not and did commit things worthy of stripes shall be beaten with a few stripes. For unto whomsoever much is given, of him shall be much required. And to whom men have committed much, of him they will ask the more. To whom much is given, much is required. And God has given talents and abilities and potentials to every person that is in this world. And some people have more than others. Some people have different talents than others. But the Bible says, to whom is given much, then much is required. In Matthew 25 and verse 16, it says, then he that had received the 5 talents went and traded with the same and made them other 5 talents. In Matthew 25 and verse 17, and likewise he that received 2, he also gained the other 2. Here we found that the persons who received of the master the 5 talents and the 2 talents, that they went and they used it to get 5 more and to get 2 more. Here they are using what they have to get what they do not have. They're not waiting for it, but they are using it so that they can increase in what was entrusted to them. But Matthew 25 and verse 18 sadly says, but he that had received the 1 went and did in the earth and hid the Lord's money. And what did the Lord or the master say when he came back in reference to that servant who hid that talent that was given to him, that one weight, that amount of weight or whatever it was? What did he say to him? In Matthew 25 and verse 30, he says, and cast ye that unprofitable servant into outer darkness, they shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. He said, throw him out because he's unprofitable, because he is not multiplying what he has. The same amount I left him with is the same amount I returned and found him with. Now, if God has given to us a certain amount of talents and abilities, and he has left it up to us with his help to be able to develop and use these talents and abilities, and we don't, then he is going to call us unprofitable, because he knows that we are supposed to be able to do something good with these talents and with these abilities. Maybe this evening you had a dream. Maybe you have a plan. Maybe it is a plan concerning your education or furthering your education. Maybe it's a plan concerning a business. Maybe it's a plan concerning your family. The whole idea behind this lesson this evening is don't sit down and wait to get something to do something. Do something right now with what you have. If it's a business, you do something right now with what you have. Whatever resources you have, if you have 1 item, 2 items, begin your business with that. Don't sit down and wait until you get all the stuff to stock up your shelves, then to start the business. Start with what you have. If you want to be able to start a saving account and you've got $10,000, then start with what you have. If you want to be able to do a business and you have to get a certain amount of money to do that business, then you can look at what avenues you can use to accumulate that money, then to get into that business. But you can't sit down and wait for that money to come, to fall out of the sky. When Elijah prayed for rain, he sent his servant to see what was happening. In the book of 1 Kings 18 verse 43 and 44, it says, and said to his servant, go up now, look towards the sea. And he went up and looked and said, there is nothing. And he said, go again 7 times. And it came to pass at the 7th time that he said, behold, there ariseth a little cloud out of the sea like a man's hands. And he said, go up, say unto Ahab, prepare thy chariot, and get thee down, that the rain stop thee not. The servant, after going up the 7th time, told Elijah, he said, I see a cloud the size of a man's hand. And what did Elijah say? Elijah said, go and tell Ahab that he better go, we got to go before the rain stop him. Now, Elijah did not see the rain. But his servant told him, I see the cloud, the size of a man's hand. But Elijah knew and had the wisdom to see the rain in the cloud. In other words, he knew that the cloud would be the vessel through which the rain will come. And so he saw that cloud and he said, okay, then let's make preparation. Sometimes in life there are things that we need, my friends, to do a business, or we want to do a business. And these things might not come to us directly. Like in other words, the money mightn't come there, but there might be an avenue of employment. And through that employment there, we're able to get the money. We have to learn to see the rain in the clouds. When Elijah heard that he saw the cloud the size of a man's hand, he said, okay, go tell the king, the rain coming. But he didn't see the rain. He saw the clouds, but he knew that the clouds would bring the rain. Sometimes we are praying for money. And God provides an opportunity for us to work to get that money. But sometimes we might be thinking that, I don't want to work, I want the money. But are we able to see the rain in the clouds as Elijah did? And then the Bible says in verse number 45, and it came to pass in the meanwhile that the heaven was black with clouds and wind, and there was a great rain, and Ahab rode and went to Jezreel. Because the rains came, But Elijah was able to see the rain in the cloud. Sometimes we say, man, I could only spend 50 minutes with my child now, but I need to spend 2 hours, and I'm working to spend the 2 hours, but you're not spending the 50 minutes. You spend the time that you have now. If it's 10 minutes, if it's 15 minutes, if it's 9 minutes, if it's 30 minutes, spend the time you have now. And you can always improve and increase as you go along. You might say, well, I am not able to go through all of the work that I did in school today with them. Maybe you're able to go through one book, start right there. And then you're going to work to go up. We have to begin to see the rain in the cloud. We have to begin to see the avenues that we can use to get to those goals that we are pursuing, or the avenues that we can use so that the things that we want will be able to come to us. Elijah saw the rain in the cloud. He didn't see the rain. He just saw the cloud from the servant. And he knew that it is through that cloud that the rain would come. There are many things we are praying for this evening. Are we seeing the channels through which God will bring those blessings to our lives? And are we capitalizing on those channels by saying, okay, here is an opportunity for a job. It's not the job that I'm looking for, but this is the cloud that will bring the rain in my life. And maybe we're looking at developing our educational standing, and we see an opportunity to be able to earn some money, to be able to invest some money. We do that because we have to begin on that road to get to where we need. The things that we desire, they're not going to fall in our laps. But there are avenues that we have to pursue that are open before us. It might not be the way we expect to get it. We might be thinking it's going to come easier. But a lot of good things, it's going to take a lot of sacrifice and diligent effort. I thank God for Elijah, because he was able to see the rain in the cloud. He was able to see the vessel or channel that God would use to bring what he was praying for into his life. Can you see this evening the vessel or the channel that God would use to bring what you're praying for into your life? It's not going to come directly. It's going to come through some avenue. Look carefully. May our eyes be open that we can see these avenues and opportunities to develop our lives spiritually, as well as to look at business propositions and developing ourselves professionally and academically. Because God will provide the clouds through which we'll get the rain. But we have to see those clouds and capitalize on them before they pass us by. Father, thank you so much for your word, and bless your word. In Jesus' name, amen.
I will stand in the congregation and I will exalt you. I will stand in the congregation and I will exalt you. Let the children of your salvation lift their praises to.
In Search of Truth has been presented by Churches of Christ in Guyana. If you have a question about the Church of Christ, or what we have discussed on today's program, or to receive the free home study Bible course, write to Church of Christ, 2841 Central Amelia's Ward, Linden, Guyana. Join us again next week as we go in search of truth.